Everyone, thank you for joining me here today on another SMITH.AI Masters Series webinar. I'm Maddy Martin. I am the Head of Growth and Education for SMITH.AI. Now, SMITH.AI is a 24/7 virtual receptionist and web chat service. We are available 24/7 for answering calls, chats, texts, Facebook messages, and what we do is a lot more than just answering. We obviously will do intake and scheduling. We can transfer calls. We can even follow up on your web form leads by making outbound calls to them. We can take payments, you name it. It's pretty robust. So go check us out if you haven't already. And without further ado, let's introduce the topic and our speaker today. So the topic today is debunking client service myths for law firms. And we are joined by John Strohmeyer of Strohmeyer Law of the 5-Star Council podcast, which I've had the pleasure of being a guest. John, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Well, thank you, Maddy. It's great to be back. Obviously, you and I were speaking just last week on a different live stream, but here we are now. The tables have been turned. I am a tax and estate planning attorney in Houston, Texas. I have been practicing for over a decade. I run my own firm. Obviously, the name's on the door. Beyond that, I had a first career where I worked for the Four Seasons hotels between college and law school. So I was the night manager for 3 of my years there, meaning I'd show up at 11 o'clock at night. I'd leave at about 8 or 9 in the morning. And during those hours, I was, effectively top dog. Every buck stopped with me. So if there was a problem with the rooms, that was a problem with me. If there was a problem with valet, that was a problem for me. If there was a problem in the kitchen, I wasn't going to be cooking anything, but I'd probably be running orders just to make sure everything kept on going. After I was done with the Four Seasons, I then went to law school, thought I'd kind of leave those skills behind. But what I learned was the things that I learned at Four Seasons do apply to how professional services are delivered. The problem is a lot of the information that is out there about, oh, Disney does this or Four Seasons does that, or, Joshi and the Ritz-Carlton, we need to take lessons from that. And the reality is, and as you mentioned, sure, I'm kind of targeting this for lawyers because I am one, but it applies to anybody who has any sort of professional service. So doctors, lawyers, financial advisors, CPAs, even my barber, it's a professional service that somebody is coming in. Kind of the key for me is the difference between what you can take from Disney and Four Seasons and Ritz and what professional services are doing is, think about it this way. If you had a free Saturday and, budget weren't the option and we're not worried about COVID, what would you do? It's probably going to come under you can categorize it as entertainment, pampering, or fun. It's easy to put Disney and Four Seasons in one, if not all of them. It's going to the spa. There's a lot more of that than going to the lawyer or the doctor or the CPA. You're not going to spend your free Saturday going to any of those.
Like your law office, right?
Right. And kind of the corollary to that is experience is important, but it's not important in the same way that it's important for Disney and Four Seasons. Why? People aren't coming to lawyers for experience. They're coming to us for results. They're not coming to financial advisors for a grand experience. They're coming for financial advice. They're not coming to a doctor for a grand experience. They're coming to get better. And so we have to make that distinction up front. So whatever your specific profession is, we can bring it all back to, if they're coming to you to move the needle, you got to be very careful about the advice that you're taking from Disney and Four Seasons, because Disney and Four Seasons can invest in their experience in ways that make sense. If they put gold flakes on something or add extra chocolate or expand the menu, they've got different options that makes sense for them. And they can see a, kind of a multiple return on what they're investing, where for us, that's just adding cost to the bottom line. And when we do that, well, it doesn't really add to our clients' results.
I mean, worst case, it's also a distraction. If you're really caught up on, even I would take it as far as, spending extra time to make your website really splashy and fancy, and you're not going to spend, $5,000 on a video. You're going to spend $50,000 on a video, right? And you surely could. So what does it mean to focus on client service and get down to those basics? Like, John, help us distinguish between client service and client experience. Where do you draw those lines?
Sure. So experience, and this definition is nothing new. It's everything that your client or your customer, or whatever you call them, it's what they received, their kind of received experience, from marketing to sales to product or service delivery. What do they see? How are they feeling? Service is how the business is getting that experience to them. And so it's not just what they see, it's going to be things they don't see. Because the way I look at it, service kind of goes in two directions. One is towards our clients. What are they doing? But also, what are we doing on the back, what we call at the hotel back of the house issues, things that nobody saw, but are still important. We don't want just the front of the house, the guest common areas, to be clean. We want the back of the house, the hallways, the corridors, the employee only areas. Those need to be clean as well, because we want to be consistent across all of that. And so service it's delivered in two ways. One, how we're delivering to our clients, and also how we're delivering our work environment to our employees, so that they can ultimately deliver to our guests or our customers or our clients, whatever we're calling that. Whatever you call them, it doesn't matter. It's the people who are paying your business. How do we take care of them directly? And then how do we take care of the employees who take care of them?
Right. And also, to your point, John, I can imagine that if there are Four Seasons employees who, didn't get their fresh laundered uniform, or they're walking through dirty halls, and then they take that sort of dirt on their shoes into a guest room, that's a huge problem, right?
Right.
Or their hair is messy, and then they throw it up into a neat bun so that they can go out into the hallway. Like, they're not going to be as put together as they would be if they just got themselves together before they even got to work that day.
Right. And it's, how do you make it easy for your employees to take care of your clients? At the Four Seasons, because we did have uniforms, there were changing rooms. There were, we had on-site laundry. So, one, you weren't taking your uniform home. It stayed there. So it was always there. We didn't have an issue with that, but it was also taken care of on site. And so you'd have a few uniforms, so that if something happened in the middle of a shift, you could go switch out to a different one and still look presentable. Once I moved into management, I was wearing my own suits every day. So, I have extra shirts in my car, because I know, they just didn't have locker space for everybody. But that's the idea, is how do they make it easy so that you're always presentable? But the idea behind it really is a consistency element. You don't want to think, this is how we treat clients, and we're going to treat employees different. And with the implication being, we're going to treat them less than we treat our customers. If you treat everybody basically the same, you don't, there's the Mark Twain quote about, if you just tell the truth, you never have to remember anything. And that's the thing, it's just, we want to keep everything consistent. And it's just knowing, look, we're going to treat everybody well across the board. Obviously, some people are employees, other people are clients. We'll have some different frameworks around them, but ultimately we're going to treat everybody the same. And at the Four Seasons, literally one of the values there was, or the last of the named values was, everyone. You're going to treat everybody the same. So if you are talking to somebody at the front desk, if you're talking to somebody in accounting about a billing issue, if you're talking to, a salesperson about running a ballroom, you should be treating them well, and vice versa. They should be treating you well. It doesn't matter that they aren't guest facing. They're a Four Seasons employee. Everybody's the same.
Yep. Okay. So, this makes so much sense. And, two sort of similar analogies here, from what you're drawing on. Let's say that there is, consistency, there's a locker room, you're supplied with your uniforms, and that ensures that the Four Seasons has a brand and look that is fulfilled. And if you are working with, for example, remote employees, and you said to them maybe almost a year ago now, which is laughable that here we are in this pandemic, recording in February 2021. But let's say that you said to your employees, oh, go use your work computer from home and fulfill all the duties that we're used to, and be really fast with your emails and your matters and your briefs that you're helping draft or whatever. Can you just please go and do that? And they're like, I don't have fast internet at home. My computer is 10 years old. My phone line isn't connected to my work line. How am I going to do that? And you basically tell them, go figure it out. And I'm not going to invest in that. You have a major problem. If you also talk to them with swear words, and then you expect them not to use swear words on a call with a client, how are you setting them up for failure? Because if you allow that dialogue and the conversation to not be exactly what it would be if you were client facing, then you're training them and asking them to switch their brain back and forth, which people typically don't do. At least they don't do all the time. So if you're going to own a law firm or any business that's service driven, you have to make sure that the back of the house is clean and that they are equipped with the resources they need to fulfill their job, and consistently so.
Exactly. It's there is plenty. I've heard plenty of studies. The context switching, the reason that multitasking doesn't work. You're asking your brain to switch back and forth rapidly between two different things. I think the idea is the same here. If you don't have to context switch of being a nice person to a client and then whatever lower standard you'd set for inter-office or intra-office correspondence interactions, it's just going to make it easier for you to just keep yourself in kind of, I'm in work mode, and this is how we behave, and this is what we want. And, part of what I've done with my own firm is, look, I've set up my values. I don't need to run specifically through all of them, but the underlying message is when you line them up and spell them out, it spells out pie and cake. And part of the reason is it's meant to be kind of funny. I've listed my dogs as employees on my website. I deal with death and taxes. I've got to, for my own kind of mental health, I'm making it a little less formal, making it easier to deal with. I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but for me, that makes my job easier. It also makes it easier for potential clients to come in and see, this is how John's going to behave. Every month or so, we'll get somebody who says, well, we weren't sure if we were going to hire you or somebody else, but you listed your dogs as employees on your website, so we're going to take that as a good sign. You're the one we're going to hire. That doesn't mean that I'm getting everybody who comes through. It just means, survivorship bias. The people who are coming through like that, I'm almost certainly running off other people who think, well, John's an attorney. He's been doing this. This is all he does. Board certified, other fancy things that I've done, but he's just not serious enough. We're going somewhere else. And that's fine. Like, I don't have to explain myself to them. They're hopefully just saying, John's not our guy.
They self-qualify, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly
all the qualifying, we'll do some of the qualifying, but that mindset check, we're getting them qualified in a different, easy way. And again, just making it easy. If this is going to be a problem for you, I've pretty much told you up front, this is who we are.
It's also the difference, like, I'll use a Tinder analogy, right? If you see someone's photo on Tinder and it's just sort of a blank background like this, you can't see what I'm passionate about. It's just flowers and green, right? Yeah. Now, if I was in like running gear or ski gear, then you would say, oh, like maybe Maddie's someone I have something in common with, right? Now, I'm not in the dating market, but listen. Like, you get the point. If I had a paintbrush or paintings behind me, you would see, oh, maybe we have that in common or not. So what you're doing is making it easy through visuals and through some content to demonstrate who you are and what you do, and a set of values also that says, do you think we'll get along? Does this resonate with you, or are you repulsed by it? Oh my gosh, how could you put your dogs on the website? Probably not going to be super fun to work together. And you're probably setting expectations that are not easy to fulfill if you say, oh, we're really going to force that gap to be bridged, right?
Right.
Then you have much harder work that you don't necessarily need to direct your energy towards. Why not make a referral and work with the next client who comes through who says, John, I think that's hilarious. By the way, I also have a Beagle or Doberman or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah, again, just making it easy for people to figure out, like I've got my background here in my home office, and it's set up like there's some, you can see some of my books. I don't
You
think you
see a
can read any of
dinosaur.
it. Yeah, you can see my Lego
Absolutely.
dinosaur because
Mhm.
as part of COVID, I've gone back to building Lego because it's fun. You can see my Astrodome pennant right there.
Mhm.
It's just, little things, and you can't see everything in here, but it does give you some insight of kind of what it looks like in my office. And that's the point. Just make it easy for people to figure out, who are you? What are you doing?
So let me ask you a question. So you also said that when we were first talking about this, that you're not going to learn the essentials of client service if you only have gone to law school, worked at law firms, worked with other lawyers and learned client service just from lawyers. So what do you mean by that?
So when you just go and work for other lawyers, we are such hive-minded, precedent-based folks that we're just going to do things the way they've always been done. And that's the problem. You've got to look outside, because lawyers by no means have a lock on client service. Sure, we're delivering high value services, but it doesn't mean that we're focused on how do we make it easy for our clients to deal with things? How do we make it easy for our employees to work for us? I mean, I got a client last year strictly because I was willing to have Zoom meetings and the other person wasn't. The prices were the same. I made it easy by saying, yes, client, I'm willing to meet with you on Zoom. And this other attorney, just as well qualified, it just kind of the mindset of, it's not all just about the person who's sitting right there in the professional's chair. You've got to realize, you've got to look at things from the other side. And so much of what lawyers do is, I'm going to just do it this way. I'm going to send you drafts in, maybe, for God's sakes, people still using Word Perfect. Nobody uses it anymore. Don't at me, but that's a whole nother conversation. But it's making things easy for everybody. How do you kind of recognize that, yeah, people are going to come in from different ways, and you have to adapt to how they show up. It's not just, this is our machine and you're going to get kind of rung through it our way. It's how can you make it easier for them to get through whatever process you're going to have it. And unfortunately, a lot of, just not having had any training on how to do that, how to serve when, in a hotel, there's no monopoly the same way that doctors and lawyers and CPAs do have a bit of a monopoly because of our licensing requirements. We can keep people out of what we do. And so that helps kind of drive us up, protect our work. But those walls, I mean, especially in law, the walls are coming down that we had around our little monopoly. So we've got to focus more on, well, what's the alternative? You can go to LegalZoom, you can do the Rocket Lawyer, the other options. You can just Google up some forms by yourself. I mean, it's like doing your own dentistry. You shouldn't, but people are going to do that. And so what's your alternative? Just being there to kind of be a tour guide through a legal process. There's not a whole lot of, there's not a big future in that. So you've got to look at, how can we get better at this? And how do you get better at it? I mean, sure, I'll share what I know. I know that's what the podcast is for. Here's what I've learned. Take it and benefit from my experience on how you can kind of turn things around and see how to make things easier. But it's by no means the one true way. And there's, every firm's going to have their own specific implementations on things like this.
What do you think are the, stemming from a lot of lawyers who have that experience, who are here watching this and saying, oh, well, I have only really worked for law firms, except for those few summers where I was a camp counselor. And I don't really know where to start, John. Like, what mistakes am I making? What are the highest impact mistakes among them, and the lowest hanging fruit that I can afford to fix without, I don't know, like, do I need some fancy consultant to tell me, like, these are all the ways we're going to overhaul your client service? Like, what can I do right now if I'm the attorney to get a handle on this and to fix it?
Right. And so this is, we want to start with kind of the lower risk items. We don't want to blow things out and say, look, at the end of the day, we're going to have a drink menu and we're going to do all of this big spend on gifts for clients. I think that's a waste of money. I think it's also a very high risk way to waste your money. I mean, as a personal story, when I started out on my own, I thought, look, this is after I'd started my own firm and was doing this, and I still ran into these issues. So it's not as though I'm doing this all perfectly from the start, but I had a new potential client and they just had their second child. I had access, my sister does these custom embroidered placemats where she, dad's name, mom's name on, and I was like, oh, this is great. They're a little they're hesitant about who they want to hire between me and somebody else. I'm going to get these placemats made and I'm going to send them. There's no way they'll go anywhere else. Guess what? They went somewhere else. And why? Well, I was charging more, and that I stick by, but I didn't give them a reason to, I wasn't articulating why they should hire me, pay more for me versus somebody else. But I was also spending my money on these placemats. But, they didn't ask for these necessarily. That, it was wasting money on gifts where the client didn't ask for these. How do I know they want them? How do I know they fit in with their decor or any of the other stuff? When we act as purchasing agents for our clients without asking them, we're just setting ourselves up in this high risk situation. So at a first point, we don't want to invest in the fancy drink menus or the fancy artwork, or actually it's not really that fancy. It's just mid-range art that's appropriate and doesn't offend anybody, and we can put that on the wall. Like, clients don't care about that. They're like, the offices really are for our benefit, not really for clients' benefits. So it needs to be appropriate. But then, like you said, where do we start? I mean, basic responsiveness. Obviously, Maddy, I've been a client of Smith for years at this point. I think I probably signed up for y'all a week or two after I started my firm. But it's a basic responsiveness of somebody calls, they're getting an answer. They're not getting voicemail. My instructions, and we keep tweaking these all the time to try and make sure. But the important point is, I don't want anybody to go to voicemail unless they've asked and said, I specifically want voicemail. And even when they just say, oh, have somebody, the issue we've been working on for the last few weeks of trying to iron things out is, how can I make sure that even when somebody calls and says, hey, can I get through? No, John's not available. They're like, oh, just have him give me a call. The problem is, like all of us, I'm busy, and oh, just give me a call goes to the bottom of the list. And then Monday becomes Tuesday, Tuesday becomes Friday, and then all of a sudden it's Febtober and we don't know where anybody is. How do we make sure that even though they didn't say, schedule me for this call, it's how can they get on my calendar no matter what, so that they do get a call back? And that, it's just that basic responsiveness to make sure that you have set things up so that if somebody calls, they're not getting, they're not just yelling into the void. Somebody calls them back. Somebody answers the call. They get to the next step beyond just, raising their hand and say, yes, I would like some help. It's how do we make sure?
John, that's so awesome that you brought that up, because I think that it highlights something that people don't realize is great service, which is taking control and taking a stand for what is in the client's interest that they may not realize or communicate to you. Now, you're the expert. We happen to be communication experts at SMITH.AI, but you know this as well. And you empower us as SMITH.AI receptionists to fulfill this for you. And what you're saying is, just so that everybody is crystal clear here, is you are pushing them towards making a better decision that they are resistant to initially, because they want John to call them back. Now, how does that happen? We know 50% of incoming calls are answered. So your chance, John, even if you are the most prompt, promising call backer in the world, you're still only getting a 50% chance that they're going to pick up, because they're not available most of the time, right? Or at least half of the time. So, or they don't recognize your number and they're like, oh, John, that was you trying to call me back. Right. How many times have you heard that or done it yourself? So you screen it with voicemail, you're on to the next thing, who knows, right? The most important thing to take away here is that you are sticking your neck out with the best client service to say, I know the right thing to do here. I am going to align that with those who are on the front line, the receptionists in this case, and it has other, impacts for email down the line when it's an existing client, not a lead, etc. But you are saying, this is how we work. In order for John to call you back, I have to schedule a time. Hopefully you're available then. If not, we'll find another way to contact you. But can I reach you at 2 p.m. today? Not when's a good time to reach you, but put something out there. Get the yes or no, not the maybe, because they know, are they available at that time or not? And it's not some open-ended thing. And then if no, they'll tell you when they are available. If yes, you get it booked and you fulfill the request of John in this case, right? To make that conversation happen.
Well, even beyond that, I can look at the call notes that we get from Smith calls, and sometimes people will just say, no, that's fine, just have him call me or just leave a message. By the time the person has made that decision, they've kind of checked out of the conversation. And so what this process is about is we're trying to just say, look, they've made that. Let's not kind of argue with them about let's schedule a call or not. Just accept that they've kind of moved on. We'll call them back, but what it's doing is making sure that we've got the process so that they don't just get forgotten. Because once that call, right, if they do schedule it, yes, I mean, all right, our instructions for agents are schedule it if you can, but as a backup, if they say, no, I don't want to schedule it, at least it's going on my calendar. And it may be a few, who knows how long before they can actually get to it or before I get to it. But then on, inside of my firm, we have the process and procedures for the staff that I pay directly to call folks anyway. I can see what shows up and I can say, hey, Brad, go ahead and give this person a call. We had a call come in late last night and they got set up for a call with me on Monday. But just looking through the notes, we could tell this is a bit more of an emergency. And so I had my staff call them, hopefully they're talking to them right now, just to figure things out. Because if somebody is close to passing, that's one of those emergencies where we need to start now. And there may not be anything we can do. If somebody's just lost capacity, there's just nothing I can do about that. But at least we're paying attention. We've obviously, they knew that they've got a call with me on Monday. But if they hear from somebody in my office, because again, we're paying attention, we're looking at this is something.
That's urgent as the expert. They don't necessarily, right?
Yeah, and it's something that we give, internally, we're giving our people, I'm giving my staff kind of a better decision tree of when you see this kind of call come in, here are some of the, red flags for bad clients, but warning flags for reasons we need to pull somebody out of the standard queue.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So the other really important point to focus on here is reviewing the work on the front lines that's being done and not just saying, I'm only going by my schedule. Like that would be potentially risky to say, you know what, I wake up every morning, I come into work, I look at my schedule Monday, okay, here's what I'm doing. And you missed that opportunity on a Friday, they call Thursday night. And then you have a whole day of Friday, especially you with the luxury of a few other staff people. There is time in someone's calendar to try and reach that person and say, look, we've reviewed the information, gold star number 1. We're proactively reaching out, gold star number 2, and we see a need that you may benefit from talking to us sooner, gold star number 3, right?
Right. And it's taking a look at it, knowing that some of the referrals out, we get lots of calls for people who haven't paid enough attention to the website and they think, you're going to do, I think we've made it really clear at this point, we've stopped getting calls for criminal defense. But things like family law and contested wills, people who want to fight about something that has to do with probate, we're still going to get those calls and we're always going to get those calls. In the same way, as a tax attorney, I'm going to get a lot of calls for things that are more properly handled by a CPA. That's fine. Look, that helps me because I'm going to send those on to my referrals. People I send referrals to back and forth.
Right.
I have no problem taking those calls because even though they aren't qualified leads, we're going to sift through them. We'll do a little bit more in depth. We'll reach out to those people with our internal staff instead of Smith, just because that referral list, and I know we've done this before, where like criminal defense stuff, y'all have the list for us, but for the super deep, contested probate work, I've got 7 people I send work to, and just that
For
decision
specific
tree,
reasons. Right.
right?
Mhm.
Like
Those are relationships.
right, those are relationships. It's also, I'm sending those 7 things, like they are different people. It's the guardianship for the adult who's losing capacity is a different uh, practice
Mhm.
than the guardianship for the minor child who's going to be disabled or for their entire life. And just knowing that's the kind of thing I want to take a look at and say, okay, we need to send this person here.
Right. Well, I mean, so for everyone who is in a niche practice, like that's hopefully good news for you to tune into that, because you will get more referrals for that specific thing that you really like to do and do well. So hopefully everyone really took heed of that. But the other thing that you're saying here, John, is that you spend time coming back to this, like debunking client service myths. Like, oh, a lot of people will say, client service should only be directed at those people who are good potential clients for you. Well, actually, no. The good client service is to everyone who's actually in touch with your firm. You politely decline, you thoughtfully refer, and then you obviously try and nurture those good leads for your own firm. But that thoughtful referral that you're describing is above and beyond the status quo by miles. And you have a team that you empower to spend their time to determine who is the good referral to send this to, which not only empowers your team to think critically for themselves also, which is important to build in any team, but it also makes your referral partners much more satisfied. I mean, imagine how frustrating it is. I'm sure we've all experienced this when you get a referral and someone says, oh, for example, Maddie, I'm introducing you to so-and-so. They need bookkeeping. Don't you do all sorts of virtual services? And unfortunately, no, we don't do bookkeeping. So that's frustrating, and you're going to pay less attention to those referrals. The opposite is you pay a lot of attention to the referrals when someone gives you the sort of consideration that your team is giving them, John, and they're much more likely to send referrals back to you. So you get paid back for that time, just not immediately.
Exactly. And it makes it easier if I'm sending it to the right place, but also knowing who I'm sending it to. It was, I sent something out to one of my litigators, and it took, 3 weeks before the client came back and said, I never heard from them. I need somebody else. That's feedback I need. And so we do track who we send things out to, just to a week later, somebody in my office will say, dear so-and-so, we sent this. Did you ever hear from them?
Right.
And it was useful because a couple weeks ago, we sent out a referral for some conflicted tax work, and we sent it to 2 attorneys here in town. The client reached out to both and then came back to us and said, well, I never heard back from either of them. I need 2 more referrals. And before we gave them any more numbers or any more names, we sent them, we reached out to those attorneys and said, hey, did you ever hear from this person? They said, yeah, they both did independently. And at that point, it's like, okay, this person didn't get an answer they liked, or they didn't
And now
know.
your name is Mr. Google. Right,
Yeah,
exactly. And they're sort
right,
of taking advantage of that. Right.
right. And at that point, the list we said, well, like, I'm not going to burn any more of my referral sources with somebody who's like, I literally gave them the people I thought were the right fit. And it's one thing to say, I didn't like either of them, or the fit wasn't there. I'm looking for this, or I'm looking for, you sent me to somebody who is smaller. I can afford a big law firm. Oh, like for most kind of certain tax problems, if you tell me, the problem is between If it's under 15 grand, it's like, you know what, you're not going to help yourself by getting a lawyer. You're now going to probably owe 25, 10 to the lawyer and 15 to the taxing authority. If you're in the 50 to 150, you're probably going to save some money or at least protect yourself. I'm going to send you one place, one kind of size of a firm, but I'm not going to send you to the gigantic national firms because you're going to spend at least that on them. And there are times and places for that, but I'm going to make some of those choices. But when I get the word back that both of the referral sources talked to her and she didn't want to follow up, and then hear from the potential client, I never heard from them. That's a very different story. And so I'm not going to go through that decision tree of, all right, well, I'll send you to the mid-tier firm that's going to charge 3x instead of 2x. And I'm certain, I'm going to send you to the lawyer referral service and just let them deal with it because, that's not worth our time.
I'm also just laughing, John, because I think, for anyone who just heard you extremely diplomatically say that's a different story instead of saying they straight up lied, that's probably, a lot of credit to you and your background in the Four Seasons training, which I'm sure you were never telling anyone they were a liar.
No.
It's a different story there you reported from the, bellman or whatever.
Yeah, there were plenty of lessons on don't start a sentence with no.
Right.
And that sticks out. I still try to not say no if we don't have to, but there are times when you need to explain that's not how this is going to work. And, as a professional, I can say no in a harder way than I could at the hotel. Because again,
well, you own the business.
I own the business.
Right.
But also at the Four Seasons, again, that was entertainment, pampering, and fun.
Mm-hmm.
We need to keep that there. We don't want to kind of jam no, we're not going to do this. It's, sir, it's 1:53. Can you send up a case of beer? No, unfortunately, I can't. State law requires that we stop serving at 2 a.m. I cannot guarantee that room service can have a case of beer to your room before 2 a.m. in accordance with our standards. Like that's just, we'll lose out on the money of getting a case of beer to you. This is your note that next time, call room service before you go out drinking. And frankly, we did have a client who knew that rule. Like he got burned on that once on a late night party. And every time after that, he stayed and he would come in on Friday and Saturday nights to have fun in Austin. He knew when he left, and we knew because he did it consistently. Hey, Jay, what was his name? I think it was JD. Doesn't matter. We would ask him, should we have the case of beer, sent up at about 1:30? Yes. Because even if it, gets warm, you can always cool it back off. And that wasn't the big issue. It's just knowing and anticipating. Like we've done this before. We've seen him come in so many times. We know what's going to happen. So we'll just be ready for him and know in the same way that when you are doing the same service over and over again for your clients, you can start to see the trends. You can start to see, oh, this one's asking for this. Maybe I should start asking other people if they want that as well.
There you go.
Picking up on it because you're doing the same thing. And, it gets into a much different topic of as a lawyer, it's easy for me to explain, like you pick your specialty and you stay there. Like I don't do family law, I don't do criminal, I don't do even litigation. And that's because I want to stay in the same area and do the same thing and get better at that. I don't want to do multiple different things that don't help clients.
So, one of the other things that you're talking about is anticipating, the preferences and fulfilling them insofar as it's within your budget and capacity. But let's take like that example of the case of beer and push it over to the legal side where you're having maybe video consults now. And do you use Zoom? Do you use your phone or FaceTime? Do you use Skype? Are you using Google Hangouts? Like, this system has to work. It has to not be glitchy. It probably shouldn't require someone downloading a new program. So like GoToMeeting and Skype are less used more than ever because you want to do something that's in the browser or that the vast majority of people have, which let's say Zoom's in that category.
Right.
You also want the right parameters. Can you charge for things? Maybe your calendaring system is a factor here. But the reason I'm bringing this up now is if you're saying, I know that this client has a preference and clients like that client will potentially have similar preferences. I know how to sort of categorize my clients. If your clients are on the older side or younger, urban, rural, maybe they're working in startups and you do business law, how tech savvy are they? How much access do they have to technology? How much help are they going to need to meet those sort of business criteria and thresholds to work with you? And if you have notes on that and you sort of are aware of those preferences, then you can set your policies to suit across the board. So if right now you're saying, oh, I just call everyone on the phone and I don't have such a great intake conversion rate and consult conversion rate because you don't have that eye-to-eye contact and that camaraderie and that relationship building, and then you go to video and you think, all right, I've been asking everyone to download Skype, but 50% of the time I come to my consult and the person's not there. And I get an email later that says, I couldn't install it, I didn't figure out, I lost my password or whatever. Are you listening and in tune with those preferences to improve your client service and then also to improve your time, because you don't want to be sitting around waiting for someone to join you on a conference call and they don't even know how to work it, right? So
Exactly.
great client service also means meeting your clients where they are and making it easy to work with you. Part of the reason why clients like, do you want a case of beer in your room? They keep coming back to the Four Seasons. They keep coming back to your law firm because you anticipate their needs and you demonstrate that you understand them.
Right. And so what you're getting at, I mean, as a first step, yeah, for video consults, I'm doing everything by Zoom. I have a few clients who use Skype, and I begrudgingly go to some meetings set up by other people on GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar. That, we've got to use something, but Zoom has become kind of the de facto standard here in Harris County, where Houston is. The courts are using Zoom, so it seems pretty easy. Look, we're just going to keep everything there. Do some people have tech issues? Yes, that's always going to be a case. I'm not so aggressive that I'm saying, if you can't use Zoom, we're not going to work. But my initial call with clients is either a phone call or Zoom. The initial full consultation will be by Zoom, just because I can see them, I can share my screen, we can work on things together, and they can see what their plan looks like. Then from there, it's what makes sense for people. I mean, I had a call with a client this morning. It was set up on Zoom, but he dialed in. So I didn't see him, I just heard him. And that's fine. Like that, Zoom gives people the opportunity to just phone in. So we are kind of checking to see where people are at this point. If you can't use Zoom, it may be one of those things like, if you don't use email, I don't know how to deal with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
well, especially during COVID in a virtual environment, I mean,
right.
How are you getting that work done? Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, the clients who say they don't, I mean, it's happened a few times where people just say, oh, I don't have email. I don't know how am I going to get you documents? Because we're not sending hard copies of things to people. Like, that's just a choice we're making to not waste time printing and sending hard copies of everything. Like, you can go, frankly, that is one of those qualifying questions where it doesn't have to do with who you are financially, but if you're expecting us to hand deliver things, we're just not going to be the right firm for you. We are serving a kind of I wasn't thinking that would be one of the requirements for clients of, you've got to be this tech savvy, but really, like, no email, I just don't even know if you're living in this century anymore. Like, sorry.
That's such a good point, John, because that's also something that can go in your client agreement. Mm-hmm. In the terms of working together. Like, these are the expectations of the, communications between us. I am committing to promptly work with you and get you the information you need so that I can carry out this legal work. But in order to do so, I hold you to these standards. And some of those standards, just like it would be within your own team with your clients, the access to technology, the ability to use it, the expectation that consultations happen by default by Zoom. There's a fallback to phone calls, but you'll be notified by email or text. If you receive none of those and you don't show up to that consultation, you'll be charged for so much time.
Right.
Like there are people who do that sort of thing. Maybe you don't even enforce it, but at least you set the expectation that there is that standard in place.
Right. And we've also built it in such a way that we don't have to put a term around it of our engagement letters are signed electronically. You can't sign an engagement letter if you don't have an email. And so we're kind of getting around that.
Right?
Yeah, it's just embedded. People don't have to worry that much about it. But the other side is, well, for the folks who are who are more tech enabled, and that's what I want to get more people who are able to do this, we're starting to put our intake process on a side project, new product, whatever, I'm not even sure what it is. Typeform, will take online, it's online questionnaires, but they have something called Video Ask, or they've invested in it. Look, I don't know all of it. I just pay them and it's wonderful. But I've recorded the videos of the initial question. So it's not just static questions. It's me asking the question, and then the respondent has the option for text-based answers. They can record a voice memo, or they can turn on their video on their phone or on their computer and record them talking through an answer.
Wow.
And then we've got the logic on the back end, because there are ways to answer questions. You can do multiple choice questions as well. Oh, well, there's the logic. If they're answering questions this way, then we're going to give them certain responses and help guide them through, so that that'll be on our website, where if you want to go schedule a call right now, it just takes you to Calendly and it asks you some of those questions. But what we're going to do is have people go through this video process first, just to do the lead qualification. Like it has things that say, well, if you answer answer the questions in the way that doesn't align you for us, doesn't qualify you as a Strohmeyer Law client, we're going to say, look, it looks like you're not a good fit for us. Here are some options for you. If you want to talk to somebody in the office to get a little more clarity, or you think we missed something, here's the link to talk to somebody individually so we can figure out a little bit more about what's going on. For the folks who make a good fit, they're being linked to here, here's the link to schedule, and then that'll dump them back to a LawPay page that's set up to say, now that you've scheduled, please pay here. And it's set up with the right amount so that they're getting, like, it's just easy and like, oh, okay, well, schedule in Calendly. It says, thank you. Now for your money.
Right.
And then,
I think that workflow also eliminates any ambiguity or doubt. You said it's going to work this way. You're going to go into a scheduling system that will finish with a credit card processing setup. And that sounds like a sort of predictable way also for your firm to know, what was the experience of the new lead who came in? You understand that. Now, a question that just came in is, what's the name of that intake platform that you're using? Not the Calendly and LawPay system, but the other one with video.
Yes, and so you can hear my loudest keyboard ever. I am putting this in the chat. It is Video Ask, and going way back, why should we listen to somebody outside of law? The reason we're doing this is we're learning there are other answers, learning what people are doing outside of your industry, because we get into ruts. And I mean, lawyers love doing this. 99% of law pages are identical, or of web pages. We're saying the same stuff about ourselves, commitment to high-end work and innovation and blah, blah, blah. You can't tell anybody apart. You can't even tell what they do if you covered up the name and the first sentence just says, we're committed to working hard for you. Okay, whatever. Taking the stand so that people know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And this is where, I'm in a group of location independent entrepreneurs. The group I think has 1,500 or so members. There may be 3 other attorneys in there. And that's great. I love going in there because I feel, I'm like the smartest kid in summer school when I'm among lawyers. And then I go in there and I see businesses and I learn things from these other businesses of how they're doing it in their industry. Some of the things don't work. We've got our ethical limitations on what we can and can't do. But I can pick up things and say, oh, I didn't even know about this. Like Video Ask, I got from somebody in that group. And it helps because now clients can log into that. They go to the website. That'll end up being our landing page of, oh, you're looking for estate planning? Here's the video. Hi, I'm John. Is this what you're looking for? Yes. And like, well, it'll route them through the right thing. They can do that at 3 a.m. They're interacting with me. So again, they can see very clearly up front, like, do you hate my stupid face and stupid voice? Good, go away. Like you're going to learn that much sooner through that video. And if you have, like for whatever reason, I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine. Like there are more than enough clients for all of us. We've got to figure out how to make it easy for them to find out, are we going to be a good fit? And it really is about speeding up their time to get to me, because if they go through that video ask sequence, and I tell, the second video, they're generally about 1-minute segments. But the second one says, thank you for doing this. This is meant to speed this up for you. But if you want to call the office and schedule a call with me, you can do that. And just the way our process works, it will take you longer to get in touch with me. But if you do this now, you're going to shave, a week or 2, possibly more, depending on your schedule and mine, off the entire process. Because when they go through Video Ask, at the end of it, they're scheduling their first consult with me. They're not scheduling a first phone call that comes before the consult.
That's
so,
mm-hmm.
And it starts them off moving faster, so that if we can keep that intensity and keep them in motion, it's faster. Because for estate planning, there's generally not a huge motivation to get this done. Once we start sending drafts to people and they're like, oh my God, we've got 800 pages of stuff to read. I know, I get it. We're doing our best. Our documents are designed to be easily readable so that, normal humans, not just tax attorneys, can read them and understand what they say. But I realize I'm sending people a raft of homework, and, they would not choose to spend their Saturday reading documents for me, but ultimately they're going to need to, as part of their adulting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. So how can I make it easier for them? We set up the documents so that they're easier to use. I've for years not used Times New Roman or Arial because they're not the easiest fonts to read, even if they are common. That's okay. Find out what works for y'all, or for you and your clients, and make it easy for everybody.
Okay. Well, that's also a gem of a tip. If you are using those fonts and if you find yourself like having trouble reading them, you can switch your font, right? So, that's an easy win for you. And you just made your life, your staff's life, your client's life easier. Now, before we close out, because we only have 7 minutes, the last thing that I wanted to just touch on really quickly is, you mentioned, John, stop wasting money on red herring products. What did you mean by that? And then we'll sort of close out and tell people how they can reach you for more.
I will do that. First, I'm going to drop a link for Typography for Lawyers. It's not just my hot take on fonts. Go listen to somebody who is a trained typographer. This is where I got all of my well-grounded takes on typography. So it's a fun read. Anyway, red herring products. This is something that we're buying or delivering to our clients that they didn't ask for, it, and it doesn't help them move the needle. The easy answer for what this is a drink menu. And I remember going to a conference a few years ago, and I was sitting in the audience. One of the attorneys had been asked, like, what do you do to take care of your clients? And she was just so proud. Well, clients ask for a drink, we go get it. If we didn't have it in the fridge, I send somebody to the store immediately to buy that drink. And then every time they come back, we have it ready for them. And that is nonsense. Like, I did not believe her for a moment then. I don't believe her for a moment now. I don't know if she believes herself, but it's frustrating because there's no way it happened. And so at the Four Seasons, if you asked for something we didn't have on the menu, the option was, can we replicate this somehow with what we have? Oh, you want a Shirley Temple. Well, we don't have, even though that's not on the menu, seltzer and cherry juice or whatever goes in one of those. Like, you can replicate that. But if you're asking for like diet root beer Shasta, nobody has cans of that in the back. And that's okay. Unfortunately, sir, we don't have that. We're not going to say, no, we don't have that. We don't carry that. Can I offer you an alternative that looks kind of like this? And after that, you're out of luck. I'm sorry, we're not going to carry Diet Shasta root beer for the one person every alternate leap year who wants one.
Right.
You just have to make some choices and know that there are going to be certain disappointments that happen for people. So the red herrings are the things that clients aren't looking for. It's, if I'm a tax and estate planning attorney, a red herring service would be me dabbling in adoption or criminal defense. Like, that's not what clients come to me for. Yes, they technically I could do that, but I'd be banging my head against the wall. I don't know what I'm doing. It's a better experience, and it's for that client to go somewhere where they can get that taken care of easily. On the physical component of, look, clients aren't coming for fancy offices. I've been in a Regis office for almost 3 years. Clients like my offices. I am not spending top dollar Class A space, but it looks great. People like it.
And
It's
you
clean.
have high-end clients, right? I mean, so
Yeah.
John, for anyone who doesn't know this, like, you have, pretty affluent clients.
Yeah. I mean, I have clients with many, tens of millions of dollars, and they like my offices. They have told me, your offices look nice.
They're not demanding mahogany, right?
No. And I mean, it's even with where we are now, like, clients are going to show up maybe once to my office going forward. Like the remote stuff, this is great. Right. And so, the other red herring things, sending gifts to clients don't act as the purchasing agent for your clients. Like, how does sending them some swag that's branded with your firm help them move the needle for their problem? It's one thing to get handed squeezy toys at a conference where you're trying to remind people who you are. And I mean, I don't have my squeezy toy collection here of things picked up at conferences.
AI pen.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's a marketing expense. And that's, yeah. I mean, there's a reason to have that, but nobody's going to pick you because of that stuff. And especially for smaller and solo firms, the marketing swag budget, like, that is stuff you are sending to them. I'm not saying it's not part of a nice experience, but I want you to know that's part of experience. Like, that's not the service that they're coming for. Like, I don't care that Smith has pens and coffee mugs and squeezy toys. Like, I pay y'all to solve a problem and move a needle on me not having to answer the phones.
And as we sort of wrap this up, like, the last thing I'll say to that point is, the thing that gets you referrals, like, oh, I could make the argument that if you use a SMITH.AI mug every day and you drink your coffee from it or your tea or whatever, that you're going to think about SMITH.AI more often. Now, I have the luxury of being a daily service multiple times a day for most people, right? So SMITH.AI is in your life. I don't need to have a coffee mug on your desk. You have that experience and you refer because of that experience. If you feel the need to be in your customers' sort of brain space and their awareness, there are newsletters for that. That's what social media is for. You can send a handwritten note, which means a hell of a lot more than a coffee mug. But that is something to be mindful of. Why are you doing it? Is it for referrals? Is it for staying top of mind? Is it for some other community benefit? Do you have an ongoing relationship with that client where they could be paying you more money for another add-on service? Who knows? But be mindful of that. Maybe if you have a subscription law firm, there are other ways that you want to be staying in touch and adding value and thanking them for their continued sort of renewal. But you have to understand why you're doing it, and is that the best path to getting to that goal that you've identified. So, with that said, with a minute left, John, thank you so much for being here. How can we find you online? How can we listen to your podcast?
Super. So I've realized I've just been sending links to you. I'm going to put the link now for everybody in chat, not just for Maddy. Link to the podcast. Start with episode 1 because it does get into my kind of broader theory of where to start on service and how to differentiate between what lawyers are doing, what Disney is doing, and what Zappos is doing. So 5-Star Counsel podcast. If you want to look for me elsewhere, John Strohmeyer, I'm on LinkedIn. Of course I'm on LinkedIn. We're on Twitter and Instagram, either John Strohmeyer or John the Lawyer or Strohmeyer Law PLLC for the legal side. But no, otherwise just reach out. Obviously you can call Smith and they can connect you to me as well.
Right, absolutely. And you can get a taste of our receptionists at the same time.
Yeah.
So everyone, thank you again for joining John and me today. John, thank you as always for your time. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.